Welcome to Affordable Foundations, Legacy Impact Through Housing, the podcast that explores how housing shapes communities and creates lasting legacies. I'm your host, Cecilia Cossio, and each week we'll dive deep into solutions, challenges, and opportunities in affordable, attainable, and workforce housing. From current housing models to innovative approaches reshaping the industry, we'll explore the policies, investment strategies, and community-driven initiatives that are making a real impact. Housing isn't just about buildings, it's about people, opportunity, and the future we're creating together. We believe everyone plays an important role in affordable housing, whether you're a real estate investor, developer, policymaker, property manager, or someone passionate about creating positive change. Affordable Foundations is your go-to source for insights and inspiration. So let's break barriers, redefine possibilities, and build a legacy together. Hello, and welcome to Affordable Foundations, Legacy Impact Through Housing, part of the Multifamily Media Network. I'm your host, Cecilia Cossio. Today, I'd like to introduce someone whose career is rooted in service, both in and out of uniform. With over 20 years of experience in development and construction, and the last 8 dedicated specifically to affordable housing. An Army medic veteran, he transitioned from military service with a mission to continue serving people, and found that purpose in building communities through affordable housing. He's a proud husband and father to a 13-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter. He's family-oriented, passionate about the outdoors, and always grounded in the values of community service and integrity. Please welcome Mr. Austin Richardson. Austin, thank you for joining me today. And why don't you tell us a little bit about you, other than what I've already said here, and how you got into this space?
Yes, thank you for having me on. Well, let's see. I started when I was a kid in construction. So I started digging trenches. Moved my way up into being a foreman, getting into carpentry, started learning other trades like electrical and plumbing, and then continued my movement up to project manager, and then eventually started my own construction company. Started another one with a business partner of mine, got out of that. And while doing that with my business partner, we got into development. We had a investor reach out to us, and we had a good name on us to build multifamily. So he called us, asked us if we wanted to do some development with them. I said, absolutely. We can build any type of multifamily. So that's where development kind of got it started. After kind of getting the taste of that, I decided to move in full-time into development. So doing a lot of multifamily apartment complexes and doing some single-family communities. Well, during that time, I was also serving in the Army as a medic. And when my time came to an end, I was kind of a little bit, let's say, lost and wanted to continue the mission somehow. And so with that, I got introduced with affordable housing. And so I'd tell you that was an interesting transition from market rate to affordable housing. Going from a simple ask 1 or 2 investors for a checkbook to what are all these acronyms and what are all these funding sources and what is this light tech that people are talking about? And I tell you what, that was a learning curve getting into this business.
Well, that's phenomenal. That's a great story. You go from being in the military, and by the way, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
It's I always am grateful to those that serve, because it's one thing to be at home with your family. It's another thing protecting everybody else's family and leaving your family at home. So thank you so much. You guys are a blessing.
Really, I appreciate that.
But you talk about being in the service and being in development and then transitioning out into the affordable housing space. Why affordable housing?
Well, again, I wanted to somehow provide a service to the people still. And with affordable housing, you're finding how to develop certain apartment complexes that people who typically cannot afford, rent and a market rate can actually afford something. And
Hmm.
one of the key things was, how do we get those individuals who do not make a higher income to get into a safe and healthy environment? Especially when it comes to children. Children need to be raised in a very safe environment, somewhere where they
Hmm.
feel comforted. And, affordable housing does that, especially in the light tech industry. We're able to build these things that look like market rate.
Yeah.
For the standard person that drive by it, they don't know that that's
Right.
affordable. And so that allows, these individuals and families, and especially seniors, we're getting more and more seniors, uh, getting out of the workforce, and there's not really anywhere affordable to go. And we need to put a place that, you know, is safe and is healthy and is in a good environment for them to live in. And, for a while, until tax credits came around, or really started getting big, you would have, bad neighborhoods, slumlords, and that was the cheap rent, but you could be kicked out the next day. There's no program to help them, and so this program has really helped a lot of people kind of get into a long-term situation.
It's and when we go back to how you started, I'm assuming that those leadership skills somehow helped you into this development space, because you had no background in it, is what it sounds like. I mean, you had a little bit from the time that you were already serving, and you said you were building, some apartments. Like, tell us, it was that 10 units? Was that 100 units? Was that, because that is like bold, and I would tell you, to be able to go from just building your conventional small or whatever size to the affordable space and not know anything about the LIHCC, the 811, the PBRA, any of that. That is a whole different bonds, whole different ball game
Absolutely.
there. And so, I think if you could tell us a little bit about that story and how that transitioned in.
Well, I think coming from the construction and development side really helped me in this industry, because what I find is I find a lot of individuals who get into light tech that, whether they're on the property management side or the, housing authority side or development side, a lot of them don't have the experience in construction or even, really developing
Yes.
a complex. And so I had that coming into it. So, as far as numbers go, what is it going to cost to build it? What is the land going to cost? Those things I knew very well. The things I didn't know was all of the extra costs that are involved in a project. So that, again, that was a big learning curve, bonds, attorneys, I've
Attorneys
never
and more
worked.
attorneys.
Yeah. I mean, look, I had an attorney for our company. That was it. I had a retainer on one, maybe two guys. That's all I needed for contracts. So getting into light tech, where it was, not only have your contract attorneys and your bond attorneys, so that stuff was new. But for me, change is easy. Coming from the military, where you have to adapt and overcome a lot of different things. Coming from having a mission that was set out 3 hours ago, and 5 minutes before you're changing it, and so you have a lot of plan changes. So the changes was not an issue. It was definitely a learning curve. But, the one thing that I always talked in the military, being an NCO, was always ask the question. And so I'm
Nice.
glad I had that mentality going into this. Was I am willing to ask what most people would think would be the stupid question. But what you find out is a lot of the people you ask that question to might not know the answer, and they have
Right.
fun. So, you know, for me, I ask a lot of questions. And even when I know something very well, I will still ask the question, because you never know, you might get a different viewpoint or a different option that's, you know, put out there for you to change, especially
Yeah.
when it comes to funding. You could go in there for CDBG funds, like, yeah, this is what I need. This is how much I need. Well, I go to the city and I ask them, what are the options? what would you think would be a good uh, something that you guys can contribute to a project? And you'll be amazed on how many different options they might have.
Where are you currently building right now, or where are your current projects at? Where have they been? I don't know if you have any current projects, but
Yeah, so I mean, I have developed in, let's see here, Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, Utah, Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, all the way down to Florida. Currently with DW Development, we are in Kansas, Missouri, Colorado, and Idaho.
I saw Colorado and Kansas. I didn't know Idaho. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and what are you seeing? What current policies do you believe are most impactful, either ways, positively or negatively, on the development of affordable housing? Because that's where I'm finding a lot of hurdles coming in at. And so I want to hear the good and the opportunity. You see, I didn't say bad. I said opportunity.
Yeah. For instance, we talked about the newest one, the big beautiful bill. We're going to get more funds for 9% routes. There's going to be more bonds available in each state because the 50% test below 25%. However, those are good. That provides more funds, gets you more units, more projects. But then on the downside of it is when you have more tax credits available, credit pricing goes down because you're going to have more availability and maybe less investors. So it's, everything has their pros and cons.
Mhm.
When they had a lot of the green initiative go out, that was great. And you had some extra funding there, but we saw pricing drop because of it.
Right.
So, there's a lot of other things that are interconnected that aren't, connected to affordable housing. Um, going into the solar, sure, you could put solar into a light tech development, but those solar credits, when you're getting those credits quicker, you're going to, as an investor, head towards those credits because you're not having to
Mhm.
wait 10 years to spend it. Uh,
Right.
so again, I think there's, depending on the policy that is put in place, it really does affect affordable housing. Again, whether it's for affordable housing about it or not. And yeah, it really changes the investor pool for it.
When you're looking at affordable, attainable housing, because as we all know, as developers, the more people want to develop, but the cost is prohibitive, and at so many levels. It's the fees up front, the city, I mean, I go through and like I told you, I'm looking at developing 16 townhomes and just looking at the land that was already zoned for um house for single family housing.
Yeah.
So now going back through and trying to get it changed to multifamily, you've got those hurdles. And in the grand scheme of things, doesn't make sense to put in single family. But we also know that single family needs are there. How do you overcome, or what do you look at to overcome some of those challenges, some of those hurdles?
Well, I would say the public private partnerships. One of the biggest things I find is going into a city and first of all asking them what they think about a project, finding out whether they like it or not, and then starting to ask those questions about, do you need this? Is this what you're looking for? You know, Providing them kind of what a capital stack looks like and how difficult it is to build these and see what they can offer. And the key is to get them excited about development more than we are as the developer, because it's their
Right.
city, it's their town, it's what they need. And I think it's been easier over the past maybe 4 or 5 years to get that involvement more, where previously it was, okay, we'll support you, or, maybe here's some funds, sign a letter and, be on your way. But that was,
Mhm.
and I think today, a lot of cities and towns, I constantly see them update their housing needs assessment and showing those big numbers and showing where the AMIs are needed and
Mhm.
having, their the population go to them and say, hey, I can't afford this anymore. Taxes are going up and rent's going up and we have to move away. So the cities and towns are seeing those dynamics and now are realizing they have to be involved in this. And so I think it changes the game a little bit today in affordable housing, where before you could develop and not really have to associate with the city or the county or the state. And now you have to have all of them involved. You have to have all of them excited about it and find those options for you. And for me, I like to see them not only help find ways to do it, but get excited to talk to their population about it.
I'm glad you say that, because in the grand scheme of things, it is a collaboration between everyone.
Mhm.
Everything we do is a collaboration between, let me rephrase that. Every successful project, I believe its success is determined by collaborations, because I need you, you need me, the city needs us,
Mhm.
and the community, the residents. It's everybody has to work together. While everyone has their own agenda, what is a common goal? And that is to provide housing.
Yep.
And I think when we get out there, we have the conversations that people don't like to have.
Yeah.
When I get in front of people, sometimes I ask the questions that are not the most popular. Like, how do you know that's what they need? How do you know you are? I've had these conversations with developers. Well, you're telling me that this is what you believe they need. Have you ever lived in affordable housing? Have you ever had to be in that space? Do you understand the dynamics of the children that are in that space, or the seniors, right? The seniors. Yeah, often I see seniors that don't have any family. So where's their communal space? And even the children and I say this because I have this conversation often on this podcast, is creating spaces that allow for families to have different experiences. I something as small as a closet or a dresser, I tell people, like, why don't we build cubbies into these closets? Because a lot of our families they can't afford furniture. They can't afford dresses. They afford a bed, a
Yeah.
mattress, and sometimes even depending on the type of property, they may not have the ability to have a mattress. These kids are sleeping on the floor, and so it's so important for us to just really understand the dynamics of the customer, the resident, the homeowner, the renter, and the community, and the outlook that they're going to have on that property. How can we educate the community to remove that stigma of what affordable housing is?
Yeah. Well, you bring up a good point with education. And I think that is one other main factor when talking with whoever it is you are, whether it's city, the county, the state, school districts, property owners, is how does the program work? What does it mean? How does the finances work? Because there's a lot of people that don't understand the program, first of all. As you probably know, a lot of people say, "Oh, affordable housing." They're thinking just something terrible, what they've seen in the movies.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Maybe like really old housing authority complexes that were,
Yep.
boxes that don't look good, and they're portrayed in the movies all the time. Well, that's not it. And that's the
Right.
first thing to show them is, I'm going to show them some renderings. This is what it's going to look like. This
Yeah.
looks as nice, if not better, than your Class A right next door. So
Yep.
first of all, let's get the view out of this. It's not going to look terrible. And the next thing is, who is the clientele that's going to be in that apartment complex? And so again, a lot of people have this misconception that it's, you know, people on drugs and don't have jobs, and it's like, well, no, these are you, right?
Yeah.
These are your friends. These are the people that
Yep.
work in businesses around you. They pay income, and they pay their rent. They just can't pay $4,000 a month for rent, you know.
Right.
But they're the ones serving you at a restaurant or a coffee shop. And so a lot of people have that misconception. It's
They're the
true.
ones
In
working in
some
those
places, it's
offices.
the police officers and the firefighters,
Right.
depending on
Yep.
how high the income is there.
Yeah, absolutely. I, being in the multifamily industry and being an operator and understanding property management and the asset management side of it, I understand what our people get paid that work on site, that
Yeah.
work on the sites that run our multi-million dollars
Yeah.
assets, right? So the ones that are responsible for the tax credit compliance. And
Mm-hmm.
when they qualify to be on these programs, whether it's 60% or 80%, because the industry has somewhat improved in their salary ranges, but it's still not significant. And many of those that work in our industry, could qualify for some of these programs.
Oh, absolutely.
Um,
I
so
mean,
I say that because I think you have a great point. These are the people that are serving you. In some cases, it's the police officers, the nurses, the firemen that work in that area. Just depending on the AMI of the
yeah.
area. So, and I will go even one step further. So even not, I say this out loud to people because for our listeners, if you don't understand the whole dynamic, and I tell people, get out and vote. I don't care who you vote for. This isn't about politics. This isn't about who you vote for. This is just getting out and voting and getting an education and making sure that you understand what these programs mean, because somebody who is even on a 30% voucher or a choice voucher or whatever, those are income based. And we kind of do things backwards. And again, not politics, just kind of explaining this because I have seen this where I have a single mother who is paying, $50 to $100. She's not working, but she goes and gets a job and is making minimum wage. But now her rent goes up $200 to $400.
Mm-hmm.
And she's not there when the kids get out of school. So she requires after school care, or, her kids are left alone because the hours that she's probably working are not your standard 8 to 5 hours. So now we're making them pay rent. We're making them, a lot more rent. So we're kind of punishing for getting a job. So it's part of it is the way our system is set up.
Yeah.
And it's, to me, as somebody who was in the property management space and saw this and saw the mothers that were out there trying to do everything they could to show their children, like, this is the next level. That's about experiences to me, getting those kids into different experiences to teach them that there is more out there. And I talk about the 30% AMI there because that is the toughest, I think, bracket to break out of if you don't understand how to do it. Getting education out there, getting resources for these families to take them to that next level. I love to see when families are out there and their children and grandchildren are graduating from high school, going to the military, going into college, and you're seeing them break these cycles of being on these programs. These programs weren't meant to be a lifelong program.
No.
Unfortunately, I think the way that some of them are set up we really need to work on that, because as a country, we've got to do better to make sure that these cycles and these opportunities are out there for our families. And that's a whole different podcast that we can go into. As you can see, I'm kind of going a different direction, not the intention, but it's the developers. These programs start with developers, right? Because you guys have to develop stuff. We have to get out there and develop things in order to be able to provide this housing. And like you said, it's not all this old box, project like looking housing. These are actually new developments, and you can't tell the difference between the A product and the affordable products. And, when people move into those apartments, into those homes, they really do provide a service. And to me, that moves mountains to me. That changes somebody's life.
Mm-hmm.
That changes the direction of a legacy. And I think, your legacy, my legacy, that's part of our why. We want to create a better system, a better housing opportunities for our children, better opportunities as a whole.
Yeah.
So when you are out there and you come across these hurdles of the zoning hurdles or the community hurdles, tell us a little bit about some of those common. Let's go with the zoning. Some of the common zoning obstacles you face when trying to develop affordable housing.
Well, I'll say first of all, I typically find the place that's going to fit the need and not have to fight those hurdles. Uh,
Hmm.
but a lot of times I'll approach the city and go through their zoning requirements and kind of explain to them what those zoning, how that zoning hurts, right? So whether it's a unit count or whether it's a design requirement, and I kind of go in and say, hey, look, I can do it to this unit count, I could do it to the design, but here's what the project's going to look like. We talked about having 100 units. And because of your design requirements and size of unit or the, whether it's units per acre, we could put 56. Now this property can obviously accept more than that. So would you like me to proceed with 56 units? And you're still going to give probably more money. I'm probably going to need more from you because there's less units. So not only do I want the fees waived and any other type of development fee, impact fee waived, but I'm going to ask you for money because you want to stick to this type of zoning or this design requirement. A lot of times it goes to the design requirements, from the unit square footage to the height of ceilings, height of
Hmm.
building. And I think once you kind of give them a good education on how that really affects this one particular project in a unit count and how that affects the community, you start to see them change. And then they start questioning and what they have in their codes and trying to change it themselves. Now, unfortunately, that takes for most places that takes
Right.
a year, but they will change it because now they understand how that affects a specific property.
And I'm sure, I say I'm sure, I'm not sure. The question's for you. Is there exceptions? If a city is looking to have somebody come in and build and develop in their area, I would think there would be exceptions that can be presented to city council or zoning and development and go through the process. But everything I'm hearing you say, it's about getting in there, having the communication, having the conversations and continuing to ask the why when you're told no, why, when you're told, yes, but okay, well, why, but here's how, here's your why, here's my how.
No, no, exactly. I try to leave it in their hands. So I'm not the type that goes in and says, hey, this is what we want to do. This is what you need. Here's how many units, and here are the things I need from you to do this, or walk away. I go in there and say, hey, I'm looking at this piece of property. I understand these are your needs. I would like further information from you guys and your opinion, and you have public kind of surveys go on and see is this going to fit your need according to my market study and my research. And here's the property. Here's what I could put on it as zoned, as your design requirements. We could put more. You have to change some things. Here is some other cities and towns of what they did to kind of go around your system in place if you agree. And then at the end of the day, ask them, what are you looking for? What would you like to see here? How many units would you like to see here? And is there anything I can help to, push this along? I could get you connected with the other cities who did affordable housing resolution that kind of went around the zoning requirements.
So with that, would you consider that like zoning reform? And when they do this, I would think that actually helps with development costs and timelines.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But what it does help is maybe it helps my project. Maybe I get my project through, but what it does is it helps them for future development. This, putting it into an affordable housing box and saying, hey, if you're affordable housing and you're between these AMIs, we're going to increase the units, the units per acre by 30%. We're going to provide these fee waivers or this percentage waiver or this property tax exemption, and they put in their own little program for their city. Well, sure, that might help my project, but that helps them over time because now a new developer could come in or many and go, hey, this is the city we need to develop in. And they're going to
Yeah.
have these options for them.
So you're helping others along the way, even if your project doesn't get through at that time. I also think it would actually provide a network for you unintentionally, right? Because you're in there actually trying to get a project through, but even so, even guiding them in through that process and giving them names of other cities, I would think that they would remember, hey, Austin gave us this information, like, let's reach out to him or let's refer him to somebody. Because I think when you give, at least for me, giving to others is just part of what we do, right? If our project or, my contract or my consulting doesn't come through, at least I provided a doorway for somebody else. I tell people that all the time, like there's enough out there for everyone. Oh, put somebody else's name out there, help somebody else with this information. And that's kind of what you're saying you're doing, by just giving them these resources to look at. I think that's a great thing, because we have to help each other in this process. It is so costly. When I was looking at some of the data, I'm like, well, this really, a lot of things don't pencil out because of the cost and because of the lack of resources that some cities have or understand. It's education. It goes back to educating them on how they could improve their processes as well, or opportunities.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. I fully believe in everything you put out into the world comes back to you. And
mm,
especially when it's for the good, right?
yes,
Um, when
yeah,
you put good energy out there, it rolls along and eventually circles back to you. Now, that's not
yes,
the reason to do it, but I tell you
right,
what, that definitely helps you in life, in anything you do. Where if you put a block wall up and you're throwing all your energy at this wall to help yourself or help your development, it'll never come back to you because
yeah,
it's not going anywhere.
right. I think it's, my grandpa used to say, you do things because it's the right thing to do, not because you're expecting anything in return.
Yep.
Like, the things that happened, like you said, it comes back around because it just does. But, when you're out there and you're just doing the right thing, it helps so many others. And my cup runneth over because of that. Like, I don't go out in there with the intention of, oh, well, Austin's gonna, I promoted Austin, so he's going to. No, you know what? I think what you're doing is a great thing when you're out there helping people, and I should share that information because it could help somebody else. It could help you. It could help, the new and upcoming developer that is about to give up. But here's this podcast, here's you talk about it, and you're like, okay, there's some options out there. That's what we're supposed to do in this world. We're supposed to help others. Like I said, my cup runneth over. Like, my blessings come 100-fold. Like, I'm so grateful. And I think when it's just part of it, it's part of everything we do. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And I
it's,
would say 99% of the people that are in our industry doing affordable housing all have the same mentality. I
yeah,
mean, you're developing this for the people at the, and so we're all doing it for a reason, for a central mission.
yeah.
Because if you didn't, it's really easy to go do market rate. It's a lot
Hmm.
cheaper. There's a lot of investors out there. So
Yeah. It's, the stigma of affordable housing is there, and part of my goal is to educate people that it's not all bad. I was somebody who was at 18 was on Section 8, and even if it was for a short period, I was still on it, and I remember the stigma. I remember the stigma it carried, and it it it's part of my driver. I remember being a young girl and watching my grandfather,
we got evicted. I didn't know what was happening at the time, but the sheriff was out there. And like one of my drivers is to educate people on how to not be in that position. And if they are, then how to get out of that position and
Yeah,
how can I help their family move to that next level? Because it's the everybody we touch, we have we have an impact on. It has a ripple effect far beyond what we will ever see. So like, let's just work on doing good things. And, I'm
yeah,
not like oblivious to the world, but I do believe that you can make an impact on one person that goes and makes an impact on 10 others, and that person, those 10 make an impact on 10 others, and I mean it just continues to multiply.
absolutely.
And that's part of what we're here for. So you're
I,
right
I,
though.
I think that's, as developers, we need to look at those type of stories, like your story. I don't know
Yeah,
why it happened, but we need to look at that and figure out how can we help with it. Is that
yeah,
providing services? Is that having more of a public-private partnership where more people are involved in that development rather than just the developer and the property manager? The thing we're missing is community. And so we need to get the community involvement more to help with those issues. And so
yeah,
maybe at the time, again, I'll just say some other story of someone getting evicted of why did they get evicted? Did they lose their
yeah,
job? Did they lose their voucher? Did they make too much money? I don't know the reason, but if the community was more involved, maybe there was service involved, or even a city of, okay, maybe we just need to get you a voucher for a month or two. Maybe you had a baby and you couldn't work, or whatever the situation is. But I think a lot of stories can be helped prior to them getting evicted.
yeah. I will tell you, like, and I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'll condense it here. Me being a child and seeing that, my grandfather always knew how to budget, but he never told me the story, and I never asked him what happened because it was one of those things, grandpa, it was a thing. And so, but what I know, what he taught me from that point on was made such a difference on how to do your budget, how to set things up, you know, how to always give, but never compromise your family's home. And then, like for me, it was when I was on Section 8, it was because I was a teen mom. And, my daughter's dad went off to the military. This is why I stick to this. Like, how does somebody qualify to be on Section 8 when their partner is serving in the military? Because, he was making $600 a month. And I was finishing, I was 18, but I was finishing up my senior year. Like, those are life choices. I get it. But it's not like we were sitting there just living off the government. But this is something that really, these are things that really happen.
Yeah.
And getting into the multifamily industry was not an accident. I believe that was God's, and I know that was God sent because I started as a leasing agent, and just real estate has always stayed there. And all of this is interconnected. Financial literacy is something that is so important. And I tell people, like, going from renting to owning, we need to do a better job with financial literacy because we don't teach people enough. I
Oh
am
yeah.
I am witness to that, and I am a product of that, like learning all these things the hard way, but never giving up, because giving up is not optional,
Hmm.
and never letting an obstacle or a hurdle keep you from moving to that next level. That is so embedded into me, and what I try to teach other women: to get out there, don't give up, don't stop, don't keep from reaching that next level. And I think, Austin, again, I don't want to take up your time, but when you say community, that is so powerful, because as property management, watching, I work for somebody who did a phenomenal job paying to bring in consultants and community advocates and community members that weren't for the landlord or for the city, but for the resident.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have owners that can do that, it is such a powerful relationship and community bonding, because they actually hear a lot of the things that the residents don't tell the community managers.
Oh, yeah.
Or, the city or the people who it's not about anything but the resident, and teaching them how to self-love, how to self-care, how to, they bring in organizations that work with banking systems. So like, I'm so glad you brought that up. And I know, again, I'm going off on a different tangent here, but it is all part of what we do and what we build, because it is a collaboration between the property managers, the investors, the lenders, the community, the residents. Everybody has to be involved in order to have successful projects. And the goal of this project is to help people find affordable, attainable housing so they can move into that next level of owning. At least for me, it is. That's what I feel is so important. But teaching them how to do that, teaching them how taxes go up every year so they don't lose their housing.
Yeah. No, as you understand as well, education is the number one thing, from
Yes.
a child's education to even when you're an adult and still learning. There's always something to
Yes.
learn, and as developers, we need to help provide that. I think,
Yeah.
unfortunately, in my opinion, the school's education isn't doing as well as it should, and so
Right.
now, unfortunately, we have to supplement that with a lot of
Yes.
times providing services to people. You talk about financial literacy. That's something that should be taught in schools. Why
Right.
is it that you leave and you can't, balance your book? You don't know how to cook, and I know a lot of these things should happen at home, but I think, twofold. I think family and community and education has gone downhill, and
Mm-hmm.
it's causing now developers to put in services where that wasn't a thing. You wouldn't have to do that. And so I think we
Right.
need to find alternatives. And so we need to, as developers in affordable housing, build the community again.
That is absolutely it. And we, as the investors and as property management, and I go back to property managers are counselors, they're caseworkers, they're caretakers, I've been the boots on the ground, and I've seen, I haven't done it when I say I haven't been behind that property management desk in 15 years, but I
Mhm.
see what my people go through, and I see what they do. And I tell people, like, listen, our team members can go get a job because they actually are pretty phenomenal. They're not your standard leasing agent, your standard property manager. They're higher level. And I say higher level, so please, people, don't take offense to that. But it takes a whole different level of mindset and skill set to handle affordable housing, attainable housing, and all the opportunities that come with it. I mean, they've got to be compliant. They don't get to run an application in 2 minutes and approve somebody. They've got to go through this whole nother level of paperwork. And then they got to make sure it maintains compliance.
I'm sure you've seen it, but if you have the right on-site property manager, that changes the whole development. It can make it or it could break it. And
100%.
and I think it comes down to people obviously finding the right person. But I think for me is, you don't have to know all those things, but if you have the desire to help people and want to be a community member, hiring that person and having the right leadership to
Yep.
train them, you got a killer team at that point, and that development will go pretty good.
Austin, I tell people this because I do a lot of training and consulting, and people always ask, like, why are your fees so much? Well, you're taking 30 years of like knowledge in this space and putting it out there. But I get more, it's what I do to make a living. It's not what I do to live. Like my life is fulfilled by the team members that have gone out there and elevated and done, and they do things to completely change somebody else's life, right? Because that's what I hope to do with them, is teach them how to live in their greatness. And that's how we should be with our residents, teaching our team members to work together. Like when you talk about property management, and you're 100% right, people on site can make or break it. So let's not haggle over a couple of dollars in salary here. Let's make sure that we have the right people on site, and all that training and leadership, whoever's in charge has to make sure that you continue to keep those people motivated and understand we have different generations working in one office, one that understands computers and one that doesn't. And the one that doesn't understand computers may be phenomenal at doing paperwork. The one that wants to work on the computers doesn't necessarily like paperwork. So like, it's important that we integrate those together. And for developers who have those tax credits, out there, you got that 10-year period. When those tax credits, we're responsible to make sure those babies stay in compliance.
Oh, a lot of paperwork.
It is a lot of paperwork. So I tell people, don't be cheap or don't be penny wise, pound foolish.
Yeah.
That doesn't help anybody.
But
But again, we can continue talking about that. Like, I think we have so many different topics we could go into here. I'm so grateful that you were able to come onto this podcast, because you truly understand the different verticals and different hurdles that people come across. And that's not always as common. Sometimes people are straight, and I say straight development, but don't understand the back end of what it means. Here's the development, but here is the operations of that. That development only goes so far before you have to bring in great property management. That really, that property management should be brought in before construction even starts, because they're part of that whole process and setting up the success of that process. Maybe not from the construction piece, but kind of, because they can tell you, most of those people on site can tell you what is happening and what our resident base is looking for. And that is so important, even though those plans are already set up. Like, they really do see the little pieces. From a development side, I'm not worried about property management. I'm worried about building this project, and I'm worried about, these buildings that are coming up and meeting these deadlines and these timelines. But this other piece has to interlock with that construction piece. So you truly have an understanding of that. And, people should be grateful to have you on their team, because that's a special gift.
I appreciate that. But I would say what a lot of people miss is that you have multiple pieces of the pie, and you need to see the whole pie itself and what all is involved. And so you get a lot of companies that have different departments, and one department does this and one department does that. And so, it's a numbers game on most of those departments. They talk about, they got to talk with an investor and go, why do we need to provide this service? Or why do we need to pay a property manager $30 an hour instead of the 18? We should just do 18. You can find someone for 18. But what they don't have is the story. And how does all of this combine make the full story? Building something on budget, on time. 6 years ago, I'd say that's easy. That's just bricks and mortar. That's fine. But you got to know the whole story through the end. Your 10 years, your 15 years, you're having a Lura for 50 years. How is this going to make? And how does paying someone $5 more an hour affect the long term? And so you have to put the whole story together of, if you have the right property management on-site person, you have the right services, you have the right, mixed income development. What you have in a long term are long-term residents who want
Yes.
to be there. When you add the community into it, they don't leave. Now, unfortunately, that's not what the program was originally built for. But in
Right.
today's time, you don't want this turnover. You don't want these evictions. You don't want these people not paying
Right.
rent. And so what happens when you build and you see the whole piece of the pie and you build a community-centric apartment complex, you not only get residents that stay there because they're happy and they feel like a community and they could get help if they need it,
Yep.
but you get other people finding it out and they want to come there. So at the end of the
Yes.
day, now you have 100% leased complex rather than paying, and it all started with the $5 raise, right?
Yeah.
You pay $5 less, but now you have high turnover and then you have vacancies and you have a hard time filling it. And it all comes down to because they didn't look at the big picture.
Yeah. Somebody that $5 brought you somebody who is a long-term invested into the community, wants to be part of the success for a very long time. And when we say that, we know that there's turnover in employees here, but the reality of it is people who work in this space want to be in this space. They have the heart for this space. That's what I was talking about earlier. There's a specific skill set and a specific mindset it takes to be successful in this space. And that $5 is so worth it on so many levels.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us today. As we wrap up, Austin, how can our audience reach you or connect with you or your work?
Well, they could connect with me on LinkedIn and shoot me a message, email, give me a call. My door is always open. I'm willing and able to help in any way that I can, or at least provide you with the right questions to ask.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. And again, thank you for your service. And to our listeners, remember that affordable housing isn't just about buildings. It's about people, purpose, progress, and building a legacy for future generations. As always, I'm grateful to our listeners and to our guests. Thank you guys for always making affordable, attainable housing a priority. You guys have a great day, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on this episode of Affordable Foundations, Legacy Impact Through Housing. I hope today's conversation sparked new ideas and gave you a fresh perspective on the role we all play in creating sustainable, thriving communities. Affordable housing isn't just about buildings. It's about people, opportunity, and the legacies we leave behind. Every step we take to improve access, challenge stigmas, and drive solutions brings us closer to a future where everyone has a place to call home. Make sure to subscribe to Affordable Foundations on your favorite podcast platform and share this episode with others who are just as passionate about making a difference. Follow us on social media for more insights, updates, and stories from the field. And before we go, a special shout out to the incredible teams working on the front lines of our multifamily properties. The property managers, maintenance teams, leasing staff, and all those who make housing possible every day. Your work is the foundation of stronger communities, and we see you. We appreciate you, and we thank you. Until next time, let's keep building a legacy that lasts.